Coder's log. Some start date, I guess. I was frustrated with screen recording software, and I found that seeming the only way to record desktop reliably in the latest OS that I have is with a built into GNOME screen recording feature, and the only software I found that would record that was some Python-y thing. I looked at its code and it used GStreamer, and I was like, hey, I could use that. But it uses a VP8 codec, and that's lossy, and I didn't understand why that would be the only option. So I reluctantly decided to look into building my own tool, because I know that can just, once you start down that road, it can turn into an unknowable infinite amount of work. And I found the one codec, FFV1, is lossless and might be fast enough. I probably should have tested it by now with just recording something from the webcam, but I instead was looking at just data rates of 1080p and of writing to disk, and some stats on like how much CPU resources it uses, and it seems like it would nearly max out the CPU. And so I looked into GPU processing of it, and people say there isn't one, but then maybe I could build that too and make a lot of people happy who want a GPU encoder for FFV1. But that would require actually understanding the codec instead of just using the framework. I've kind of wanted to understand how codecs work. I have, with the 3D camera, I had to look at the actual raw data. So I was a little interested in that, and so I just went down the rabbit hole deeper, and I found a document on FFV1, and it's kind of long and has a lot of numbers, and I decided maybe I should start with a simpler codec to look at first, and for some reason I thought JPEG would be simpler, and I found a document on that. And it's fine. at glance, but then going through it, there's parts of it that didn't seem to make any sense. So I looked at more stuff and found that it was just doing a terrible job of explaining uh, decimation, partial decimation of channels and uh, some other color space. So I spent a bunch of time learning about color space decimation and come back and find that the original JPEG thing specification I was looking at was not the full specification. It was just like what are the differences between some JPEG sub specification and like the main JPEG specification, but then the main thing that I was looking at was actually like behind some expensive paywall. So end up reading the explanation on Wikipedia, which is actually really good. And I find out that there's more layers to it than I thought. I thought it was just like some metadata and something similar to fast Fourier transform, but with like the imaginary channel thrown away. But it's more complicated than that. And I think I'm actually still going to finish through it before looking at video codecs. I have been making reference to video codec terminology in the JPEG stuff. As I understand it, the video stuff is largely based on similar stuff to how image tech works. So I think it'll still be useful. But yeah, I feel like I went way out there digging and digging and digging, and I'm only part way back from that. But that's not even getting to reading the specification, much less trying to do some compressing or, recording a video. I also diverted into looking at the current state of 3D cameras, and it looks like before, when I was just like so frustrated because people couldn't even get cameras, and it looks like that's much better situation now. So making a screen recorder that uses depth to mask out a head might actually be a useful thing now. Just has me interested in having another reason for working on a screen recorder slash webcam-y thing. But I don't know. There feels like there's way more who knows at this point than things that I can feel confident about, and I don't like there can be a lot of anxiety with too many unknowns. And whereas before I thought I was nearly to the point of recording, now I feel lost and adrift in the sea of code. Um, so, don't feel like I've adapted to this new situation yet. But I'm hopeful